Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're glad that you're joining us for our show again this week. We're glad for people like you, people that are interested in the issues that are happening in our cities. Because it is important for good government to have city staff, city councils, and the people that live in the city interacting back and forth, sharing ideas and sharing information. So we're glad that you're interested. If you haven't watched our show, each week we'll have something on from one of the 9 cities in Northwest Community Television's viewing area who can share information about the current issues that are happening in each of our cities. And then from time to time, we'll bring in different groups like we're doing this evening that affect all of our cities. So I'm very happy tonight to welcome Senator Ann Ress from District 45.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So we're glad to have you with us again.
Thank you.
It's been a while because the last time we had you here we were talking about the Capitol restoration.
That's correct.
And so we're glad to have you with us again. And because you've been here before, you know that I'm going to have you introduce yourself out to our wider audience. If you can give them a little bit of information about yourself and your time in the legislature.
Well, thank you, Juanita. It's always a pleasure to be on your program. I've been in the legislature. I was first elected in 1984 to the House and served there for 8 terms, 16 years. And then when Ember Reichkott-Young, who was our state senator at that time, when she retired, then I ran for the open seat in the Senate. Most of my work is done in the tax committee. That's where my experience is, and that's where my interest and passion is, if you will. And I currently chair the Tax Reform Division and am the vice chair of the full tax committee. Then I also serve on the Transportation Policy and Finance Division and also on the Agriculture Committee. In addition, I serve on the Legislative Audit Commission and also I'm a member of the Minnesota delegation to the Great Lakes Commission, which I've also very, very enthusiastic about that work, and have just a great interest in economic development issues and the clean water initiatives that we are pursuing with cleaning up the Great Lakes, as a matter of fact. And then I've been really involved over the last actually 15 years, ever since I got in the Senate, with the restoration project for the Capitol.
We'll talk about the legislative session that's going to start off on March 8th. And where I wanted to start from was that actually this is a really good time for people who have ideas of what should be done or concerns about a particular issue to bring them to their legislature.
That is certainly true.
I think a lot of people aren't aware that you and the others over there, you want to hear from people.
Absolutely, and you know, it goes from sometimes, or some people think we're meeting all the time, that we never go home, you know, but that's not true. And we are meeting at a later date because we wanted to make sure that the Minnesota Senate building was finished. And of course it was finished on time, and as I mentioned, under budget. The session is going to, I think, focus on the bonding bill, the capital projects bill, and Governor Dayton has recently, as he is required to do by statute, released his bonding proposal. His proposals for capital projects.
Let's go with that a little bit later, because I want to focus now on how you keep in contact with your people out there, and then how they can get in contact with you.
One of those projects is one that I'm going to be pursuing, however, that's actually up in the Great Lakes.
And then we'll give a little more information about that.
But we do, as an example, and we now have time to work on things. I heard from one constituent who was very interested in pursuing a statute that would limit the amount of time that a truck could spend idling.
Okay.
And because it causes air pollution,
right,
of
that's
course.
true.
And there are, on the other hand, there are lots of good reasons sometimes
Right.
why trucks idle.
Right.
So we looked at, when I got that letter and pursuing that, a constituent,
Right.
Not anything I came up with on
Right,
my own,
right.
then we looked at what other states do.
Okay.
And we also looked at, there are, I believe, 4 cities in Minnesota that already have ordinances regarding trucks and buses. Buses are a big one
Right.
too. Idling. Sometimes they've just restricted it to a single street.
Okay.
That if you're on this street, you can't idle for more than 5 minutes.
Ah.
So now we are meeting with interested parties. So we're talking to the Trucking Association, whether they think this is a doable idea, whether it's whether there's some things that we need to make exceptions for, and what and how we should proceed. So before the session, we really have time to look at drafts of legislation that come from constituents like this one. Not that I would have come up, I mean, not that I don't think it's a worthy idea to pursue and talk about, but this came, you know, from a constituent. And we are also, and these are just meetings I've had today on people who are concerned with veterans services, and particularly those who have come back after 9/11, serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, to find themselves dealing with post-traumatic stress symptoms, and what we can do, what are the kinds of things that we can do beyond what we're already doing to help those folks. And that came, these new we have some things that were already in place, but there was you know, citizen group that came and talked to me today about some ideas they have on that, and we have time to look at that. It may not even result in legislation, but it's a topic that's very important, that all of us care about, and this is the time to do it in a more you know, easier time with less busy time now before session starts in March.
So what is the best way for people to get in contact with their legislators?
I actually prefer email.
Okay.
That way I do have a written record of it, but it's a written record that I can store as opposed to a letter. A letter, sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle. But the emails are always on your computer. We don't erase them. And we catalog them, we file them, and we can always find them then. And certainly phone calls are welcome as well. But I think the most efficient use of constituents' time is to use an email. And sometimes my response when they write in about an issue is a very quick one back that says, I agree with you, you know, let's do something about that. And it's instantaneous. You know, I might respond within an hour of them sending me a message. Sometimes, obviously, it takes much longer, but if it's a topic that both the constituent and I are familiar with, the exchange can be pretty immediately, pretty immediate and fairly quickly.
But I thought that if people know the fact that they're concerned and maybe they have a good idea, if they don't take the time to share it with their legislators, it's not going to go forward at all, but it can.
Also, we send out during the session, and I've already sent one out already, an email newsletter.
Oh, right.
So people can sign up for that, and I report on what's going on at the Capitol every week. Also, for way over a year now, I've been holding listening sessions, like on Saturday mornings for an hour at Frankie's in New Hope, just to come in and have a cup of coffee and let me know what's on your mind. And people have come to that with ideas about, you know, there ought to be a law, you know, kind of thing. And it's very informal. It's very you know, I'm not giving formal reports or anything like that. Sometimes there are 3 people there. Sometimes there might be 10 people there. Occasionally, it's one person, which is just fine. We sit there and talk for an hour about something that's important to them. And and of course we have town meetings too for the district. But I really enjoy those listening sessions, and then you can find the schedule on my Capitol website as well as my personal website, and we send out the schedule. We publish it, and hope that many people who want to come and chat, they don't have to come to St. Paul. They can be in the community.
Well, and then as an idea moves along, you're gathering information, the people are gathering information, and it may come to the point.
Finding more supporters, finding out who's going to oppose it, you know, if somebody is, and why, and try to work with them to work out a compromise if that's possible.
And then if it gets to the point where it goes into legislation, then they can follow that process too on the Senate or the House website.
On the Senate website, and they can do the same thing in the House.
So there's lots of ways for people to tap in.
Lots of ways of people to, and of course they can watch the actual proceedings. They will be able to watch the chambers.
Committee rooms in the new Senate office building will be fully operational for the 2016 legislative session. Improved technology will bring the rooms up to speed in the digital age. Enhanced audio, better sight lines, and a strategic seating design is meant to provide better state government access for people with disabilities and for all Minnesotans wishing to participate in their government. One of those committee rooms will serve as the temporary Senate chamber for the 2016 session. The renovation of the state capitol building has forced the temporary closing of the Senate chamber, marking the first time since the Capitol was completed in 1905 that a Senate session will be held outside of the building. The century-old desks were carefully removed from their home in the Senate chamber, taken down the halls, through the tunnels, out of the Capitol building, and into one of the new committee rooms. The desks were then put into place, and a few finishing touches were made to prepare them for the coming session. Televised coverage of 2016 Senate floor sessions and committee meetings will be produced from the new facilities at Senate Media Services. Control rooms are equipped to provide live coverage to the temporary Senate chamber and 2 committee rooms in the new building. A studio area is designed to provide daily updates for live coverage programming and interview segments that will include state lawmakers. For the upcoming session, the Senate will also use temporary hearing rooms while work on the state capitol continues. Because these are temporary rooms, they will not be equipped for live TV broadcast and video streaming. In 2017, the restoration of the state capitol building will be complete. Live coverage capabilities will be provided to committee rooms in the new Senate building and to those in the newly renovated Capitol building. At that time, the temporary Senate chamber will be converted back to a hearing room, and the Senate will once again hold floor sessions in the state capitol.
Okay, now we'll shift gears a little bit because we've alluded to the fact, but that legislative sessions are actually 2 years long.
Yes.
And people aren't always aware of that, so I thought maybe you could talk about the first year of the legislative session, what gets involved, and then the second year, and the second year is where we're at now.
That's correct.
Okay.
We pass a biennial budget. Some states pass an annual budget. The federal government has an annual budget mostly. But we have a biennial budget that we pass in the odd year, and we did that last year.
Right.
we have a constitutional deadline to adjourn in both years,
Right.
which is the third Monday, approximately the third
Right.
Monday in May. We can adjourn before that,
Uh-huh.
but we can't go beyond those dates. Generally, in the first year, we do all the budget
Right.
work. In the second year, we concentrate on the capital investment bill.
Uh-huh.
The committees can meet during the interim, but they can't take any action.
Okay.
All the action has to be taken when we are actually
Right.
in session, and that will be true this year as well. So that's why it's important to do all this pre-work so that when the session begins, because it's a short one
Oh,
in this
right,
second
right.
year, we can, you're ready. You're not going to wait a month to
Right.
introduce a bill. You're going
Right.
to do it right away in March. So it'll be quite of a speedy pace
Right,
there.
right.
And once
Now,
we get back in.
now we'll back up to where Governor Dayton brought forth some ideas for the bonding bill.
Right.
And maybe you can talk a little bit of that. He brought a couple of things forward. One dealt with water treatment, and
Lots of
then
water
one
projects.
with construction projects.
Yes.
So maybe you can.
Well, those water projects are all part of the bonding bill because
Okay.
they are building
Right.
projects. You know, they're doing wastewater treatment or this or
Right.
that, or looking at the buffer zones again. The governor is just really, really intent that the rivers and lakes, particularly in southern Minnesota, that are, you can't swim in them, and you really wouldn't want to boat in them, and they don't have any fish in them, that we reclaim those by these cleaning up contaminated water. And the big project that I'm working on is continuing the cleanup of the contamination of the Duluth Harbor and the St. Louis River, and that's in his bill.
Okay.
And that you're always looking in those bonding projects to see if the state puts in money,
Right.
is there a chance that the federal government will match that?
Right, right.
And or asking local communities
Oh,
to
sure.
participate as well. And so those the money goes farther when you do that. Besides the water projects, the governor has made a number of proposals for higher education.
Oh, right.
We need
right.
to really keep on top of what's called the asset preservation, where we make sure it's not the glamorous part,
Right.
but when a boiler fails, it needs to be replaced, or
Right.
you don't heat the classrooms or
Right.
the dorms. And so we need to make sure that we keep up with that. And some years we've fallen behind on those kinds of projects. They're
Right.
not as glamorous as
Right.
you know, a new medical building
Right.
at the at St. Cloud State or someplace, or the U in the Twin Cities, but they're certainly necessary. But higher education, that is a huge chunk of the bonding projects. What he did not include were transit projects. But his comments on that were, he expects the issues of providing for transit funding to be in a transportation bill itself,
Okay.
rather than in the state bonding bill. So we'll see. There's lots of legislators that are promoting lots
Right,
of projects,
right,
and they will be whittled down, I am sure, to a reasonable level. And we always need bipartisan support,
Right.
because it's an extraordinary, in order to pass a bonding bill, you have to have a supermajority.
Right.
We'll also be taking up in the session some of the issues that have risen to the forefront of public attention that may still yet lead to a special session.
All right.
And I don't know if you want to talk about that
Well,
now.
briefly,
Would that be
we
okay?
could just touch on
and
it, right.
there are three big topics.
Okay.
One of them has to do with income inequality,
Right.
particularly for African American families and constituents. A second one, the miners on the Iron Range are in dire straits because for a lot of reasons, but a big reason is a lot of steel is coming into this country from China.
Right.
And it has really undercut the United States steel industry. And we participate in that through our taconite mining.
Right.
And so we're looking at extending the unemployment benefits there. And then the third one is kind of interesting, actually. It came out of 9/11 to have the state's driver's licenses have a whole lot more information on them, something that's called Real ID. Minnesota resisted the federal requirement, but we're now only one of 5 states that are not compliant or on our way to being compliant.
Right.
I think we ought to do it and do it now. We've got a 2-year waiver. I think we should get it done. You know, we know we're going to do it. In 2018, you're not going to be able to get on an airplane unless you have a Real ID certified driver's license. I understand the concerns about privacy, but I think we need to make sure that travelers are going to be able to continue to be able to travel in the United States. Overseas, you need a passport. But in the United States, or to visit federal facilities. I got a constituent that wrote to me and said, you know, without the Real ID, I can't visit my daughter on her Army post because they won't let us in without it. So I think we need to be reasonable about it, move forward, and pass.
All right, now switching to an area that didn't get covered in last year's legislative session, transportation. Maybe you could, do you think that the legislature will get involved in this issue?
I hope so.
What do you think is going to happen?
I hope so. Transportation has really, funding transportation has really been on the outs for years. We have seldom, in the years I've been in the Senate, I think we've passed one transportation bill.
Oh my goodness.
Otherwise, it's a lot of talk, and you end up with only something that we would call a lights-on bill. And we have not been able to do major funding for our infrastructure, either for roads and bridges or for transit or both. And we, I think, we owe it to the people of Minnesota to work harder to come up with something that speaks to everyone's interests in having a multimodal transit system in our state. And we have a lot of miles on the roads, and a lot of those road miles are in disrepair, and also the bridges, and in the metropolitan area, transit, whether it's buses, LRT, bus rapid transit, we need to further develop those plans, and it takes funding, and we're way behind.
And do you think it's a matter of metro, in-state, out-state, or does that come into it?
That's the competition for those dollars certainly is part of the discussion. But it's not a matter of just transit. I mean, there is transit in greater Minnesota.
Oh, right.
And so
they
it's
need it
not
too.
it's not just, well, transit is
Right, right.
is all metropolitan projects. That's not true.
Right.
And we make sure, and the greater Minnesota legislators
Right,
make
right,
sure
right.
that we know that. And I'm hoping that there can be a meeting of the minds, and we can come to a reasonable funding that is sustainable. One of the problems in using the general fund is if we go into a slight dip in the
Right,
economy
right.
and then that money goes away, the competition for the general fund dollars between Health and Human Services and education, transportation is going to get the short straw.
Yeah.
So we need, I support a gas tax and
Right.
have voted for it a number of times, but we need a continuing, ongoing source of funding.
Then another issue that didn't come to agreement last session was dealing with taxes.
Right.
You didn't pass a tax bill. Maybe we can very briefly
Well,
get your feelings on that.
We're certainly committed. I'm on, as I mentioned,
Uh-huh.
I'm on tax reform. I chair the tax reform division, and and I'm on the conference committees with Senator Skoye and on the Senate side leading, and then Representative Davids on the House side, and we have quite cordial meetings and so forth. It just the urgency to pass a tax bill was not there because last year we had a surplus.
Right.
We didn't need to raise taxes.
Right.
And so the discussion came with trying to work a transportation bill, compromised, and getting a tax bill at the same time, and that did not happen. But we didn't need to pass a tax bill in order to balance the budget.
Right.
We didn't need to do that. We still don't need to do that. But I think we are certainly in the Senate. We're committed to working really, really hard to see that we can pass something that's responsible and accountable.
Well, then we'll encourage everybody out there to get involved with their legislators like
Absolutely.
you, with people in your area. Bring your ideas forward and then follow them along as they're going,
Absolutely.
moving forward.
Yes.
So we'll thank you for watching us tonight. So definitely get involved. Take time. If you have ideas that you think would be beneficial to our state, contact your legislators. Take your idea and get it started moving forward.
Come to our town meetings.
Right,
Come to our
right,
legislative
right.
listening sessions.
So we'll see you again next week. Bye.